go.
Welcome back to the second episode of E Says, P Says, your weekly dose of black love.
My name is Ellyn, the E.
My name is Paul, the P. This week we'll start at the beginning. Most people looking at Ellyn and I now don't realize our backgrounds are very different. So today Ellyn will discuss her upbringing and our first meeting from her point of view.
Thanks so much for that intro, Paul. And though our backgrounds may be very different, there are lots of commonalities that make our relationship work.
So, Ellyn, where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and lived in the same house from the age of 4 till shortly before we were married. As a matter of fact, till about 7 years ago, my mother still lived in our family home. It was the place that even our kids called home.
What was your family's makeup?
On my mother's side, I had 11 aunts and uncles. My mother was the youngest girl, so I grew up with many, many mothers and many, many opinions. I grew up with a sister and brother in the home and have several siblings on my birth father's side. It was the total opposite on my dad's side. My father had 3 brothers, and he was in the middle. 2 of my uncles lived in Brooklyn, and I saw them and my cousins occasionally. My oldest uncle still lived in North Carolina, so I only saw him and his family on special occasions and holidays. My birth father was raised by a single mother and learned about his biological family later in life. He had 4 half-sisters and 1 half-brother. Although I spent time with my bio dad's family, I did not know they were just my family till the age of 8.
How did your family feel about education?
In my family, education was very important. So important that I was never asked if I was going to college. It was always, where are you going to college? In that vein, I attended many different elementary, middle, and high schools in that pursuit.
What was your educational experience?
I started my education in a Montessori school. Then, to my dismay, I was sent to public school in the 3rd grade, which was quite a shock after feeling so secure at Montessori. Although the public school was one of the best in the district, it was a different feeling and a different group of kids. Since there was tracking at the time, I started in one of the lower 3rd grade classes. Fortunately, my teachers saw that I was in the wrong place and I was moved to a higher level class. I continued in public school till it was time for middle school. I went from public school to Catholic school. Another jolt and a whole new set of kids in a uniform. Well, at least I did not have to decide on what to wear. Since I had gone to a Catholic camp in the summers, I wasn't thrown off by the religious part. Although I do remember asking my parents if I could become Catholic because of the shortness of the services. My father said I needed to go to a church where the fire was burning. Of course, I was confused because up until that point, the most excitement I had in church was attending with my aunt, who was Pentecostal, and watching the people in her church get happy, as she told me. I especially loved watching the choir members get happy because the choir stand was steep, and I always watched to see if anyone would fall. They never did. After middle school, I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. My parents thought I was becoming wild. This was funny to me because some of my classmates were dating grown men and they would be outside in sports cars waiting for them after school. So in 11th grade, my parents transferred me to a friend's school, which was Quaker. So again, I was in for a culture shock because I'd only heard of them in books. After all, they helped some of the slaves escape to freedom. How bad could it be? So it's interesting learning who Quakers were and what they stood for over the next 2 years.
What kind of activities did you participate in?
Since I was a city kid, my parents felt it was important to get us away during the summer. So from the ages of 6 to 15, I attended camp in Tennessee. I started these summers with 2 of my older cousins, Dion and Michaela. After camp, we stayed with one of my aunts, Paula, my mother's second oldest sister. The camp part was fun, but staying with my aunt was torture. She was a health food fanatic when health food tasted horrible. Although the time at my aunt's was not fun, she did teach me how to iron, knit, and sew. I remember her bringing the iron out to me the first time and me asking her what that was. She asked, "What does your mom do with the sheets in your father's shirts?" I told her that once a week a man rings the doorbell with a box of my dad's shirts and a package of folded sheets. My aunt laughed and said, "That sounds like DJ." Some may call me a BAP, a Black American Princess. I consider myself a tomboy. The only sports I didn't play were basketball and football, and the only reason I didn't play those sports were the boys on the block wouldn't let the girls play. At various times in my life, I took piano, dance classes, karate, and other lessons as my parents saw fit. My dad always took us somewhere for spring break, and up until my teenage years, we traveled south every Christmas to be with his family.
How was family life before you left for college?
Until I went away to college, my life was pretty drama-free. Unfortunately, that wouldn't last because of the drama at home. I wanted to take a year off before attending college and be around for my siblings, but my mother said no. So on the first weekend in September 1983, my mother, aunt, brother, sister, and cousin loaded up a rental car and we headed north to upstate New York. They checked me in, helped me unpack, made sure I had the essentials, and that Labor Day headed back to the city. It was so long ago, I'm not sure if I cried, but I do know I stood in a circle on the top of the hill near my dorm waving till the car was beyond my sight. And I can also still see my little brother and cousin facing the back window and waving goodbye to me. My mother was not a talker and still isn't, but she either gave me a letter or mailed one to me at school. It was about 5 or more pages telling me about all the negative things I should watch out for on campus.
Do you remember our first meeting?
Yes, I do. It was shortly after I finished or stopped reading my mother's letter that I look up and see 3 black men. Imagine a naive 18-year-old young lady listening to a mixtape her friend gave her in her dorm room with her door open, only to look up and see such a sight. One of the men was very tall with huge glasses. The other 2 were much shorter. I don't recall what they said. I was so frightened it was all I could do to shut the door and lock it. Then I turned down my music and hoped to never see them again. Well, that wouldn't be the case. The tall one was Paul, not on my radar at the time. I like my men tall, but more of the light-skinned, curly hair, pretty boy type. And that is our first meeting.
Tall and light-skinned, huh?
Disclaimer, we are not therapists. We are just hoping to help others through our crazy love story.
Shout out to everyone who took a few moments out of their day to listen. We hope that anything you heard was helpful.
If you want to do something, donate your time, talent, or funds to a cause you feel is worthy. Or just in a note of thank you to someone you know working hard at whatever it is that they do and making lasting change in their field.
Thanks for joining us this week on E Says, P Says, your weekly dose of black love. Check us out on our social media platforms. Facebook, E Says, P Says. Instagram at E Says, P Says. TikTok at E Says, P Says. YouTube at E Says, P Says Live. And on X at E Says, P Says. And make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of our episodes. And feel free to leave any questions or comments on one of our platforms. See you next week.